I'm Fernando Zazueta. I'm the chairman of the board of the the Raza Historical Society, and I want to thank you all for coming. Hey, Carl. Let me introduce Carl Soltero. He's over here talking to Hilbert. He's on our board, as is Bert Garcia and Dr. Gregorio Mora-Torres. Who else? Who else is on our board that I didn't introduce? Oh, Rosana Alvarez, waving at everybody. We're in the corner, stay away. Thank you, and we want to introduce Steve Robles. He's the money man, right over here. Steve Robles, our assistant treasurer, and Sandra Jewett, also on our board. She's a native of Mexico City, and she just got into an accident, so treat her with care. Treat her with care. She's walking around wounded. Oh, by the way, we also have Victor Garcia. I haven't seen my buddy here since we were on the board of the Mexican Heritage Corporation. Welcome, Victor. And Ann Ravel, one of our nominees, or candidates, I'm sorry, for the State Senate. And Dr. Albert Camarillo, you remember him from last year. He's the fellow that gave us his entire library after he retired from Stanford, where he was 3 times identified as the outstanding undergraduate professor in all of Stanford. Dr. Camarillo was very kind to us. He's the first guy to really recognize the value of what we are hoping to do, and that is to identify and collect memorabilia, information, documents, photographs, take oral histories of people who have been part of this valley but whose histories have never been told. And we are hoping to start that. We had Friday, there was a city council meeting that Sylvia Arenas was at, and there was a Dr. Stephen Pitti, P-I-T-T-I. He wrote this book called The Devil in Silicon Valley. It's a dynamite book that just tells you all the history from the time of the Spaniards to the present. And I can tell you that what he says in that book was true when he wrote it in 1994, and it's as true today as it was then. And Melinda Sapien is one of our members of our advisory council. She's waving at everybody, but she says, I don't understand. All right, we have actually, one of the reasons that we are having this event is because getting all this information costs money to process it and to file it and to do something with it. With us today are 2 of our board members, Dr. Gregorio Mora-Torres at San Jose State, Professor of Chicano Studies, is it? And Bert Garcia. He's the son of the original publisher of that magazine called El Excentrico. Anyway, so let me continue here. Bert Garcia is the son of the publisher Humberto Garcia, who published El Excentrico from 1949 to 1981. Well, I guess you took over for a few years before that. And so he's going to talk about El Excentrico and the Richard Diaz, el fotógrafo de las estrellas. Eventually, Bert Garcia was able to convince the estate representatives to give us all of those photographs. There's a treasure trove of photographs, and what's going to happen is we're going to invite all of you and all of the people out in East San Jose to come out to where we have our house, our Checky house, and help us identify some of these photographs, because we can't. He took a lot of pictures, but he didn't identify very many of them. So Bert Garcia will be doing that, and it'll be followed by Dr. Gregorio Mora-Torres, who will talk about the community service organization, and that's where Cesar Chavez got his chops in terms of political organizing. So first up, Bert Garcia.
My name is Humberto Garcia III. I go by Bert. And my father is Humberto Garcia II. He was a publisher, editor, founder of El Excentrico. And for 32 years, we published El Excentrico throughout the Santa Clara Valley. In 1974, my father passed away, and I made a decision to continue publishing for another 8 years. We have thousands of photographs. We have over 750 issues of the magazine, and currently San Jose State University is in the process of digitalizing that, and hopefully by the end of next year it'll be available on the web. My father had a very interesting and tough journey. So his father, Umberto Garcia I, was a lieutenant colonel of the Mexican Army. And in 1918, he was in charge of a brigade that was to meet the revolutionaries of Pancho Villa at the border of El Paso, Texas, and Mexico. In that day, on February the 20th, over 250 people were killed and died in that terrible scenario, and one of those happened to be my grandfather. So, more importantly, is that my father was 6 months, 7 days young. And so he never got to really have the benefit or to know his father or to gain from the experiences of a parent. In addition to that, his mother, Rosia de la Rosa, was stricken with tuberculosis. And during 1918, there was not much to do other than give them sympathy. So for 8 years, she was bedridden. And in 8 years prior to her death, she gave my father some advice about, hijo, quiere usted viva con pasión y con la fuerza. So live with passion and live with gusto. My father, when I asked him about his background, as a teenager, he would avoid the question. He said, I don't remember. And it would annoy me at that time. And then later, as I became an adult, I realized, of course he knew, but he didn't want to go through that journey, emotionally, psychological journey of living all of those memories in which, basically without parents. He lived with an aunt. She was very, very poor. So after a few years, they moved to El Paso, Texas, and lived there. I published the magazine in 1974 and continued the tradition. There were many contributors to El Excentrico, writers, too numerous to mention, but I think that the one that the most legendary figure that you may know is Luis Valdez Machete, that is a legend to most of us and has done many things for the immigrants here in the United States. He writes very extensively. I won't read you, but there's some brilliant items in the magazine. In addition to writers, there were many photographers over on the right here. There's Bill Gonzalez, Ray Reyes, Fernandez for photography. I learned a great deal from Fernandez photography. He was our wedding photographer, and I also published and did over 200 weddings on the right there. We published them a lot in the Excentrico. But one of the most individuals that contributed the most in thousands and thousands of photographs was Richard Diaz. He started with Excentrico magazine in the 1950s, the late 50s, then early 60s, but he would submit just Polaroid photographs. And he wanted to be a real photographer, and so because I was so young and I was responsible for the magazine, the photographic aspect of it, my father was the rest of it, I actually started him off with showing him the darkroom and the processing and all of that, and he went on and contributed immense amount of photographs. He passed away about 7 years ago, and he and Vera, his wife, were socialites, and they attended most activities here in San Jose. Any parade, any quinceañera, wedding, the bands that came from South America here. He photographed many of the local, artists and all. So in the funeral, I was invited to the funeral by the grandson, Raymond Diaz, and I introduced myself to the two nieces that were caring for Vera. Vera, upon the death of Richard Diaz, was emotionally, psychologically, economically, in real hurting terms. So she needed help, and two of her nieces, one of them is Miss Gonzalez, they were taking care of her. The other one was Irene Gruensfield. So, in essence, we have thousands and thousands of photographs. We have thousands and thousands of negatives, and we are going to, as Fernando had said, we're in the very near future. We're going to do a display here at the Chetty House and at the Kelly Park, and certainly you will be invited. So we thank you for your time. We thank you for your support. And if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Bert Garcia.
By using different cameras. So it's going to be quick, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and we're going to cover 30 photographs. But keep in mind, they only represent 30 of maybe 10,000 plus negatives that we're going to have to identify and use for historians to analyze and to discuss. We can learn a lot about music and a lot about Mexican culture, and basically about everyday people in San Jose.
Yeah, that's fast. Maybe you can slow it down. That's it. All right.
Let's go back.
Don't blink, it's over real quick.
Well, this is just to give you an idea of the kinds of photographs that we have, and we need your help in identifying a lot of the people that are in those pictures.
So there's that's a very unique picture of San Jose and Cesar Chavez. That's a very famous picture of Richard Nixon. Leon Ramirez is a San Jose State reporter, city San Jose reporter. Fernando Zazueta, way back there when he was the president of the Mexican Heritage Plaza. Somebody took a picture of him.
All right, back it up then.
And this is he was known as the photographer de las estrellas because he took a lot of pictures of a lot of Mexican actresses, actors, musicians, singers, and so on. Lorenzo de Monteclaro. Jose Alfredo Jimenez. And that one I couldn't figure out.
We need your help, people.
Yeah. Maribel Guardia. Pedro Fernandez. Selena. Pepe Aguilar. Rocío Durcal from Spain. Ramón Ayala. La Sonora Santanera, la Sonora Santanera. There was this woman by the name of Rosina Bernal. El Buki Mayor. These are little known groups. Las Jilguerillas. And this is a real famous shot that we liked. This is how he had his, one of his rooms in his house with hundreds of pictures all posted to the sides, to the ceiling and so on. So we're going to try to reproduce that eventually.
That was his fighting system.
And this is grandson, Ramon Ward. And Lino Covarrubias for a long time has been trying to do something with his collection. And so he eventually decided to give the collection to the La Raza Historical Society. And this is a very good idea of what we can do with this collection. It is really a history of the CSO after 1970. Keep in mind that the CSO was founded in San Jose in 1952 with Cesar Chavez, one of the original members. But throughout the 1950s and 60s, there were basically very powerful, influential groups. But Lino Covarrubias begins in 1970s, and so he's trying to collect all these newspapers about the history of the CSO. And so he's collecting newspapers, he's going to be collecting photographs. You can see a lot of the pictures are basically about Lino Covarrubias with a lot of well-known individuals. And again, I don't know who this person is, but this is Lino Covarrubias with the annual food drive that took place every year from 1950 all the way to the 1970s. So you see the 27th celebration right there. And so he went on from 1950 all the way to 1977, 1978. And so there's pictures of that, documenting that. But then, he also had got involved with a lot of culture. So this is kind of a cultural groups. Carlos Gomez was a famous individual, master ceremonies, radio, disc jockey. Okay, one of the things that he used to do, Reina del CSO, the board of the directors, again, there's Lino Nora Mineta again, Al Garcia, and I'm not going to say much about these people because I think you know them all. But the CS board of directors, and again they're there. Blanca Dorado, who doesn't know Blanca Dorado? Lina Manriquez, well-known entrepreneur, very influential businesswoman. She goes back all the way to the 1950s. And then this is, again, the other part of CSO, supporting the United Front Workers in the 1960s, obviously. CSO events that they're organizing. So this is a collection of newspapers, of photographs that they have. And we need to identify what were these events about. Another community activity. And this is the most important part. Here they're documenting the meetings, the membership, and this is something for historians to look at. And CSO was once a part of La Confederación de la Raza Unida, and so they're documenting also the connection to the Confederación de la Raza Unida, which was one of the most influential organizations from 1970 all the way to the year 2000. Aliso Health Clinic, still around. And then the other thing, this is where we really can find a lot of stuff. After 1970, one of the big problems that we had was basically trying to give people green cards. So CSO was responsible for basically legalizing a lot of people's status in the United States. And so these are all documents of the work the CSO did. And this is to me what the real essence of CSO. And there's one individual that was helped, and I can't really figure it out, but he's obviously going to the CSO office. And then obviously the last part is Cesar Chavez's death in 1993, and again, Lina's documenting that. And again, this is just a small part of this collection. I want to thank Ramon Martinez for that. And I think this is going to be a good addition to our collection. Thank you.